We are going to be starting with the aftermath of the first presidential debate. We knew it was going to be monumental. Millions watched, but I don't think anyone could have predicted the feelings of concern and upheaval in the Democratic Party over the president's lack or ability thereof to debate last night. Former President Trump not being fact-checked in real time. I want to play back for you, even if you watched the entire debate. And I know that some people watched the first parts and then did not watch the end. I want to play back two of the most important questions and issues that I think that they both took on, which was abortion and what happened back on January 6th. Take a look.
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it.
The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few. On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on up on Capitol Hill. And all those people, every one of those who were convicted, deserves to be convicted.
Now, that was just a small part of the 90-minute debate from last night. You could not help, and I really don't care what party you belong to, but be concerned in the first few minutes by the questions of the debate, by President Biden's responses, his facial expressions, his voice. He lost his train of thought several times. He mixed up words, and perhaps this was the largest example of it. Take a look.
Dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
Okay, so debates are supposed to give voters an idea of what each candidate would do if they were in office, what their philosophies are for the country. There was a lot of looking backwards for both candidates, what Biden did, not what they will do for the next 4 years. And the thing that makes this debate so important is now calling into question, of course, President Biden's ability to be the nominee. And only he himself could take him out of that position. And when you look at potential candidates in the Democratic Party, should that happen, Governor Gretchen Whitmer is definitely towards the top of that list. So this brings in all sorts of conversation now. So I want to bring in Dave Dulio, of course, political science professor at Oakland University, to talk to me about this one. Dave, it's good to see you. Before we jump into future, I want to just go back to last night. And when you watched this, what was your, I guess, your response to what you saw for that 90 minutes?
Well, and good to see you too, Christy. Thanks for having me. You know, I think as everybody watched it, it was a collective oh no about Joe Biden's performance. And I think that, I guess I'll say it this way, in the last, 12 hours, 14 hours, the entire context of American politics has shifted in a seismic way with the reaction to a very poor debate performance from the president last night. I think that, yes, you are so correct that these exchanges are supposed to give us a look at what these candidates would do in their term coming up. In both men's cases, it's what would be a second term like, right? And that's different this time, maybe because we've got two incumbents, essentially, right? A current and a former president vying for the next chance at the job. So, you know, maybe it is always a look back, but I think that there were two issues that were on center stage last night: competency and character, right? And as you know, both of these candidates are incredibly flawed, and a lot of Americans don't want either of them to be running. But the competency question was squarely on President Biden's shoulders, and the character question squarely on the shoulders of former President Trump. And watching the president's performance, one has to conclude, I think, that he didn't pass that test.
And I think
now,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was in the wake of the debate, right? In the post-debate spin is just as, if not more important than what we saw during the debate. I mean, the collective Democrat freakout is something to behold, and it is shaking American politics. I mean, in ways that we haven't seen in a long, long time.
So let's go ahead and take a look now what could be the next steps here, because if you look, this is, again, it was a debate that they never happened before the conventions, the nominating conventions. So now you have a real question here if there could be changes. And when we talk about how this impacts Michigan, Dave, of course, you see the name Governor Gretchen Whitmer popped on a short list as a potential. You've heard pundits already put it out there in the last 12 hours that she possibly could be someone to step into this role. She has a book that is coming out in the next week and a half, and we know that that's always a precursor to national politics. She has been doing national interviews, not really a lot of local interviews, but national press interviews. What do you make of Whitmer's name now in the fray here?
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, she's got this national profile. We can't forget that she was mentioned often in 2020 as a vice presidential contender, and she has maintained that national presence. I think that number one, I mean, for us to get to Gretchen Whitmer for president, we have to go through a number of other steps, and the likelihood of those, I think, is pretty small. Although never say never in politics, right? I mean, you've watched this long enough to know that over and over again. But the question of whether or not she is a formidable candidate, I think can be answered by her time here in Michigan as a candidate and elected official. So there's no surprise, I think, that Democrats are looking her way. Plus, Michigan's incredible importance in the Electoral College map that's going to be relevant here in a few months.
Yeah, that she won by 10 points last time she was elected. She has repeatedly said over and over again that she is not seeking the presidency, that is not a role she wants to step into. This morning, she put out a statement, and I want to make sure that people see this one. She wrote that Joe Biden is running to serve the American people, that Donald Trump is running to serve Donald Trump, and the difference between Joe Biden's vision for making sure everyone in America has a fair shot and Donald Trump's dangerous self-serving plans will only get sharper as we head towards November. Dave, I want to ask you, though, about the impact, and you talk about this really turning politics on its head in this last 12 hours, how a poor debate performance, and again, I think it's larger than just one bad night for Joe Biden, and you articulated that well, but how this could affect other races on the ticket here in Michigan when you look at the top of the ticket that may not spur Democrats to turn out, younger people who traditionally vote Democrat, to turn out for Joe Biden should he stay as the nominee. What could that mean for the open Senate seat here in Michigan?
Sure. I think Democratic candidates down the ballot have got to be nervous. I'm one who thinks that congressional races, especially those for the U.S. House. U.S. Senate's a little different, but local races are usually decided on local issues and the interaction and exchange between those two candidates and their competing messages and visions for what they would want to do in office. But here, I think that the big question for some of these candidates on the Democratic side has been Democratic enthusiasm and the soft support that President Biden might have is probably getting softer as we speak with younger voters, right? I mean, they were already skeptical of an 80-plus-year-old incumbent running for re-election. African-American voters, Arab American voters have all sort of shown this soft support for Biden and weakening support for Biden. And I think, unfortunately, for the Biden campaign and other Democrats down the ballot, last night did nothing to enthuse those, folks that are making up their mind whether or not they're going to vote at all.
Yeah, you know, speaking about not relevant whatsoever, and I've got to point out this absurd part of the debate because there's so much other things to talk about, but they got into golf and the golf handicapping of each other, and I threw up my hands at one point. I'm like, are you kidding? Is this what we've come to? Let's go ahead and play that clip real quick.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf with you if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to turn
Let's not act like children.
You
to
are
a
a child.
specific.
I mean, Dave, I was left speechless by that one.
Yeah, it's absurd, right? I mean, it's absurd. And, you know, President Trump says, let's not act like children. Well, too late. And it's, you know, when I heard that exchange, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. Do these two guys not have enough respect for the voters of this country, not to devolve into, you know, a blanking contest over their golf game? You know, it just is beneath the office of the presidency at some point.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. We're supposed to have another debate in September. We'll see what happens. There's a long time to go before that way, and then we'll be watching what happens at the conventions. Dave Giulio, poli-sci prof at Oakland University. It's always good to have you with me, and we'll tap on your perspective in the next couple of weeks. Appreciate it.